Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Awesome. Man, I saw some of the work posted yesterday already. It was like, holy crap. Did you guys see that one posted in our Facebook group? It's like those works looks better than mine, man. It was like, I'm not happy with this. So check this out. They're gonna share it. If you guys didn't have the chance to see, it's pretty cool. Let's see right here. Let's go to. If you're not in the group yet, it's like please just ask to join. I can just like check your name, check with the school and everything and see if they match, and then I can just add you there. But check this thing out, man. Like the people post up so many like cool works. It's like this one's pretty cool from a student that took the class actually offline, right? A couple of times it's just like offline, and they still do a beautiful job. I love this one here too. Look at that. Very, very flashy. But this one here, check this out. Look what Adam did yesterday. He's like in a much more advanced stage than I am right now. I was like, dude, look at my comment in there. Okay, this is super quick, except for one tiny small problem. It's much better than mine already. Yeah, he definitely put some sweet time in there. It looks really, really nice. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to catch up with Adam now. Thanks, Adam. All right, so let's go back in here. A couple of things I have to talk about. The first one, we're going to be setting up a couple of things today, just to make sure that we have like world scale for our scene. A couple of things I have to mention. Yesterday, remember I had that problem with my Maya, that I was having all those errors and everything. And I just deleted the environment file and it didn't work. We still had the problem afterwards. But then what I did, let me just try to find it here. Documents, Maya, 2020, basically this. So here, instead of Maya creates like this preference folder. So under basically like your username, documents, Maya 2020, if that's the version you're using, there's this preference folder, which is a pain in the butt when you have to remove it because basically like you lose all your preference. So you have to redo everything that you did before. So I just like renamed it to preference old, and then just open Maya again and let Maya recreate that folder. And the only thing I did was actually I brought this shelf, my custom shelf, this one here, Chris. I just copied from this old one to the new one, and then I have my shelf back. But all this configuration that I had like done yesterday for the, it was like for the render settings and everything, I kind of lost. But now it's all recovered, so I did that. And the second thing I did was to create this little, just the quick shortcuts, because remember yesterday I was like, it was a pain in the butt to just like have the interface a little minimized like that with the reference on the side. And I had to kind of like, every time you try to click in a brush, it kind of disappears in there, right? You have to kind of like roll it to go back. So I just put those guys in there so it's easier for us to see. If you are not very familiar with ZBrush, which I hope you guys are, to customize stuff, you can just go to Preferences, Config, and just click Enable Customize. And then if you click Control and Alt, you can drag stuff around, So the way I did this once is basically like I just selected the brush I wanted to add in there. So for example, like I get this single brush in here. And then when I go to brush, now I have this icon in there. I can just click Control and Alt and then just drag it and put it around there. And then when you're done customizing, you can just go to Preference, turn it off, Customize, and then just Store Config. And then it should be good to go. So just those two things I did yesterday, just to make sure that everything is working. And I normally when I have those problems, I try to solve it and then tell how I did it, because some people sometimes get into the same trouble, So my progress with Sam was just about that, right? Like I posted the video yesterday. You can see it on my, both in the classroom and also in my Instagram. So that's basically where I stopped. The sucky part is that when you're working with Sculptures Pro, if you go too high res too soon, which is basically what I did, I start like, going a little bit too fast with the higher resolution. It kind of like ZBrush runs out of memory and it cannot store the whole history, right? So what I could store was basically like, I can show you the transition right here and what I did as well. So basically like it stored a good chunk of it, it's like almost everything, but definitely it was a ball with a little face, right? That's about when it started, and you can tell like the resolution was already too heavy in there. That's why it didn't have enough memory to store the whole thing, but almost everything. So the transition that I basically like where I stopped with you guys yesterday was around here. So I stopped right here. So what I did from this point on, since I had like the resolution too high, and I was concerned that I would not be able to subdivide, to create a, you know, it's like a longer history to show, I basically decided to just do a z-remeshing here. So normally when I do that, I just go to the subtool and I duplicate my subtool. So I have like a buffer in there in the background. So this is the where we stopped, right? And this is the new one right here. And this one still has the history. So at this point, I just created like a z-remesh right here. And I subdivided a few times, right? And then I reprojected this guy into that guy right there. And then I continue from here, basically. And then it got much faster to just sculpt, you know, it's like without a ton of resolution. So at this point, I kind of like removed the Sculptris Pro just to make sure that I had enough resolution to keep up with you know, with the history in here. And then that's basically where I stopped right here. I added a couple of more resolution levels, so like 600,000, but my lowest res looks like this, basically. So one thing that I do very early on, I try to make sure that we are using world scale for our characters, right? It's very important because of, just to make sure, it's like you guys are seeing my screen and everything, right? I'm not just talking to myself here. Okay, cool. The thing that happens is that sometimes if you don't pay attention to the world scale, what happens, like all the values are going to be passing to you guys because I'm going to basically, like I said yesterday, share my skin shader in every single node and everything. So if you follow what I'm explaining here, you should be able to get like a fairly realistic skin from the get-go. But if you're not following that, sometimes like people get in trouble. The skin looks like too flat. There's not enough subsurface, or sometimes it's too subsurfacey, like it looks like a candle, right? It's all a matter of like paying attention to the scale of the character. One thing that I do, I mean, like Google is your friend. Like you can go to Google and Google, for example, like average height of a human skull, right? Or a human face. And then you're gonna find stuff like this. You know, it's like a study in here that shows that an average height of the face, right? Like from the top to the chin, for both men and women, it's about like at the 99 percentiles, like 23, so 9.4 inches height. And then the minimum here starts a little bit smaller for women and a little bit higher for men. But on average, I would say like 9, so between like 8.6 and 9. So I would say like 9 would be a good average size for the human face if you're sculpting an average. If it's a giant, obviously, you know, it's like you're going to go for a higher number there. But so with that in mind, what I have to figure it out now is this. So if I look at this guy with his family here, his head size is much smaller, right? So what I'm going to consider here for the purpose of this, working with this little guy, is to probably like use like, let's say like 60%, so like 2/3 of the scale, maybe a little bit bigger than 2/3, you know, but not by much, because his head looks fairly small, you know. And then the cool thing about that is that probably like the structure of his skin and everything should be fairly similar to, you know, the average skin is just very pale. And that's going to create like a little bit more translucency overall in his face, which you can kind of see here. So he's very, you know, it's like because he's so pale, he has the veins and everything very visible in there. But it's going to be cool to have like a kind of like a average skin in a shrink size face, right? It's kind of like looking at a little kid, right? You're going to see it's a little bit more glowy. It has a little bit more of seems like a scatter is a little bit stronger, right? Than an adult, especially like an adult, if you have like someone who has like a sunburns, for example, right? Like that basically like that crust that's created at the surface of the skin is going to block a lot of the sun rays, right? So the scatter is going to behave differently. There is even like something we were talking about when I was teaching the class about the Native American, not the Native American, was actually the African guy. That's basically, if you compare like an African person, right? Like with a very dark tone of skin, and you compare to someone who is like not necessarily an African person, but who has like a very, very dark skin tone because of like a lot of like sunburns, for example, right? Like someone who is taking like is super tan, right? Some super tan to the point that the skin got like really, really dark. comparable in terms of the tone, comparable to the African person. But then one is going to have this scatter behaving differently because one is going to have this extra crust, right, like from the sunburn, and the other one is going to be a natural melanin occurrence, right, like that's has more melanin in the skin. So the way that the light's going to penetrate the skin and going to propagate inside and generate the subsurface is going to be difference between the two. Although the two skins look basically the same in terms of tonality, right? The behavior is going to be different. So there's all those things, But in his case here, it looks like he's very, very pale. It's like someone who probably like maybe his skin was too sensitive to get too much under the sun, and then he's probably like was kept very protected. He was probably like 16 or 17 around here. And the interesting thing is that as a baby, he was quite normal. Look at this. There's one here of him as a baby. This one, kind of like a quite normal baby, right? And then it's just like this super accelerated age process that happens, with those guys with progeria. And obviously, like I said, I'm gonna have to change a couple of things so it doesn't look too much like him at the end. But you can see, for example, in guys like, I think I saved one here. So this one here is not him, it's a little girl. But they have like similar features, right? And then there is actually, I don't know if I saved that one, was actually two brothers, this one's like two brothers, brother and sister. Very similar too in terms of, and how cool is this this zygomatic in here, the muscle right here, pulling straight from the bone right there and into the corners is very, very visible, right? Not so much on her in here. It's very interesting, like the nose shape as well. You see like my nose in here, I don't have that bump, I'm gonna have to add, but I notice on him, he has like a very squarish top of the nose right there. It's very triangular, so I'm gonna have to implement that. But interesting stuff. So at this point here, I have my character not super well developed, right? Like I kept this way because today I can actually do more sculpting with more time, do some more sculpting about, it's like adding more of the features and talking about that, the anatomy behind it, also the ears and all that stuff. But at this point, I think it's a good idea to export him to Maya at this stage here, and then just scale, So I'm gonna just get this one. I have 647,000 polys at this point. Just gonna export it right here straight away as an OBJ. Let's get to F Chris semi OBJ. Let's get this one as semi sketch one. And then let's bring it to Maya. So the first thing in Maya here you have to pay attention is that there is a setting here you have to set up if you never did this before. Otherwise, you probably like, if you did this already, so you don't need to set up again, but it's just the first time. So when you go to import, click this little option box in here. And then by default, it try to auto select the best file type. You can just switch to OBJ. And that way you're gonna open the options for OBJs down here. And you see, like, because I just installed Maya, it says multiple objects right here, which is basically like if you just installed your Maya, that's basically what you're gonna get. Switch to single object and make sure you save this, save your settings, save and close right here. So next time you import, basically like this, you double check, it's like that next time you import, just to double check, just make sure you have the single object. What happens with multiple objects is that if you export a mesh from ZBrush, for example, with multiple polygroups, those polygroups come with as different objects. So you're gonna get like this gigantic puzzle of the face. And from that point on, nothing is gonna work because there's no way to simply update your model anymore. It's not gonna match the vertex order or anything. So make sure you have single objects so it comes attached, So once I have that, I'm gonna click import. I already set up my project, so it's always going inside of Semi right there. So I'm gonna go to OBJ. I'm gonna get this one I just exported. And let's see the position here and the size. Looks kind of small in there, right? So let's take a look at the height. One thing we can do as well, we can move this around, right? Like let's bring it over above the ground in here. So it doesn't, it's a lot under it. We're gonna keep above the ground. Obviously, it's your option if you're gonna build like a full body or something, you know, it's like you move to where you think is the best place. But in this case, here, just above the ground. So I'm gonna switch to another view. So in Maya, you just click this 4 quads in here, you can switch views, or you can press very fast, like press and release space bar, and then you can switch from one view to multiple views, right? So I'm gonna go to the front view in here and confirming I'm in the right axis. So it says front, so I'm good, right? Front. So I'm gonna go right here, and you can actually turn the wireframe by pressing 4. It's pretty solid, right? Because it's just like, it's very high res. Not very high res, but fairly high res. So we're gonna measure this head now. So before you do that, you can click in this preferences in here. Again, you can go either here or under Windows Settings Preferences, right? Now it should be working after I did the reset of my preference folder. And then if you go, you just click Settings right here in this list, you should see the units in here, the working units. So I'm gonna switch, you're gonna see like the grid in here is gonna change. So right now, each one of those squares is 1 centimeter. So you can see like his face is very tiny, right? So I'm gonna switch this to 1 inch. So each one of those squares now is 1 inch, right? You're gonna see it changes millimeter, get a lot of them, right? So I'm gonna go back to inch in here, and we're gonna set up to around, like I said, like a 6, right? So we're gonna do like a 6 of those little squares for his face, because I wanna make sure he's smaller than 9, right? So if you're doing like your character as an average person, I would use like 9 of those little squares in inch for the average of the height of the face. But in his case, it's gonna be just 6. So one thing I can do here to make it easier as well, you can go to Create, and you can just do Measure Tools and Distance Tool. Right. And you can just like, let's say I'm not gonna create like from the origin here, I'm gonna go a little bit higher. You can even click this guy here, for example, to snap. We're gonna snap to around here. And then I'm gonna bring it up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 around here. So as you can tell right there, right, I have a number 6. And then that's basically the height of the face that I need from now on. So let's switch to, let's go around here. Let's see, from here, let's bring it up a little bit. Let's just turn off this snapping here. And then we are pretty close. I'm gonna just like make a little bit bigger like that. The chin can be a little bit lower as well, so a little past that. Doesn't need to be completely precise because basically an average, right? But around here, around his chin, to the top of the head now is about 6 inches. Yeah, I can make a tiny little bit bigger than that, just in case. Right, something like that. So now we are sure that we have like an average size that fits this little guy. In your case, if you're working with average face, right, you can always click those little locators in here, and then you can stretch. You're gonna see like the number is gonna change right there, right? You can go all the way to 9. If you wanna do like using your channel box in here, you see like I have translate at 7, so I can add like, for example, 10 in here, and that locks into 9 because it starts at 3, right? Like because I left a little gap in there. And then, so basically like this would be a 9 inches height right there. But in my case, 6 and a little bit should be okay. Now I'm gonna bring it up a little bit. It's not necessary, but like I said, I'm gonna probably like build a little bit more of this area here of his neck and maybe like the collarbone and things like that. And then, so I'm gonna keep a little bit higher around here. And that's gonna be my, basically like my neutral pose, right? Like my neutral position for the face. But like I said, I mean, like if you're working with a full body, feel free to move anywhere you want, as long as the size of the head is proportional. You know, it's like we need to make sure that it's world scale, because otherwise everything is gonna fall apart from this point on. Let's keep it around here. I'm just gonna freeze it. So I put it in place. I'm gonna freeze it. So I'm gonna go to Edit, actually Modify, and you can just go to Transformations, Reset Transformations, and then Freeze Transformations. In this case, I already have mine here, so I'm gonna freeze first. So you notice that like the translation, everything went to 0. And I'm gonna click Reset. You're gonna see the pivot going to the world center in there. So Reset, so we went right there. So freeze and reset, right? Which you're gonna find right here. Freeze first and then reset next. So now I'm gonna just export this. So export selection. And I'm gonna export as OBJ as well, all the way down here. And I don't need to check anything here, should be fine. Let's do semi sketch scaled up right there. So now if I go to ZBrush, let's just import on top of this guy here because it's the same resolution, right? And we should be able to preserve all the other levels as well. So just gonna go import and scaled up. So it popped somewhere there. And then I still have my resolution levels. So we're good to go. So now at this point here, I'm gonna be considering this the position I'm gonna be working from now on and the size I'm gonna be working from now on. Probably like his, the size of his head's gonna get a little bit bigger, I think based on the reference I'm seeing there. It seems like the cranium is a little bit bigger than that. But overall, I think it's gonna be a good height, you know, for what we need. So make sure you save your scene in there. Let's do a save here, save as. And then same model, I'm gonna put just like scaled up, something like that. And then for ZBrush, every time I save a scene in ZBrush, normally I don't use the save subtool. I use the save project. And the reason why is because I don't want to have to reset like all the shaders and everything. I want to make sure that everything is exactly like I left when I closed the project or the scene. So I just go to File and then Save As. Yesterday I saved with the undo history because I want to preserve that to be able to generate the movie, right? Like to, you know, the whole time lapse. But then the file gets super big. It was, I think it's around 3 point something gigabytes. Let's just check here. ZBrush. Let's try that. So you see like 3.89 gigabytes, which is gigantic, right? But because I already generated that, I don't need to save the history here again. So one thing I can do from this point on, we're gonna just like eliminate all the undo stuff. And I'm gonna turn off the undo history in here, right? And I'm just gonna go save as. And we're gonna save it as just regular. So this one has the name history in it. Those ones don't. So this one, that just means that I don't have any history saved in there. And this file saved much faster, right? Because it's only like 16 megabytes basically instead of 3.8 gigabytes. And then under the edit in here, you can always delete the undo history if you want, right? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know this one. Delete older undo history, delete undo history. Huh. I don't remember seeing this one. What this? Oh, same thing. Okay, fine. So I don't have any undo history anymore. So my scenes from now on should be a little bit faster to save. And also I don't need that, right? And that's basically it. So let's do a little bit more sculpting here. And normally, not normally, but sometimes I explain a little bit more about you know, the UDIMs and all that stuff. But since we are not there just yet, let's leave it for a little bit more towards the end of this week. So we're going to be talking about like the number of UDIMs, how you plan it, because at this point we are just sketching. So let's focus on having fun with the sketches, because that's the best part, you know. It's like to actually try to find the character and you know, it's like let's talk about like the anatomy and things like that. And the difference between this guy here and a little bit more average person as well, right? So I'm gonna just move to the side in here, and let's start doing some sculpting on him. And like I said before, you know, it's like it's this gigantic puzzle. Every time you do likeness, it's a puzzle, right? Like because you have to find different angles to get different clues about stuff. I found this picture here with which I thought was pretty cool. That shows a little bit more of the volume of his cranium, right? And also how long his nose looks like from that position in there. There's a lot of interesting clues, you know. It's like the shape around here, all the way from the temporalis, you know, to this brow ridge in there. And also the lighting tells a lot as well. This one is a small, you know, small resolution one, but interesting the shape of his cranium, right? Like how it's almost like a an average regular cranium and then combined with a small tiny face underneath it. It's interesting because the dome, it kind of like spreads his ears around there, like it's very wide around there. You know, it's like in my case here, I don't have quite that, but at the same time, we have to see that probably this was taken with a longer lens as well, right? So if I turn off my symmetry, my perspective, I'm probably gonna get something a little bit more on that side, right? Not quite. One thing you can do as well, I normally say I like the new features of ZBrush since they implemented the new camera stuff, but I still don't completely trust it. You know, it's like somehow it doesn't behave like a real 3D camera just yet for some reason. But it's better, you know. In this case here, since we're gonna be working with a portrait, I can switch like between 50 and 85. So I'm gonna go to 85. And the interesting thing is that sometimes, let's see if this new ZBrush works with all lenses. But in the past, yeah, this one is working with all of them. I would open some files sometimes, and then the 35 and up would work, and then 28 and lower than that would not work. So in this case here, since I'm going to be working with a portrait that's probably going to be like from chest up to the face, I'm going to switch to an 85. But you can definitely, you know, put the custom here. For the record, like the human eye captures around like 60. So a human eye is kind of like equivalent to a 60 millimeters lens. There's always variations and everything, but an average of 60 would be basically like what your eye is seeing. In this case here, like I said, I'm gonna keep like 85 because a closer shot. And we're gonna be working in some more stuff. So his nose, as you can tell, there's a lot of information that's completely missing in here, right? Because we're just sketching. So now I'm gonna try to find some of that stuff. So let's start with my move brush. Put this guy a little bit more to the side around here. Have a little bit more space. It's not ideal, you know, it's like to work like that. I have like, this monitor is only 1080p. I wish it was higher resolution, but that's what this old Wacom tablet is. And it's cool because of the videos are not so huge, right? Like but definitely like would be interesting if I had a little bit more resolution to work with. So basically like I'm reversing that bump, and it's gonna be quite square at the top in there. So I'm gonna have to do some of that, but I'm just reversing it and adding a little bit more, you know, it's like a little bit thinner around here. I'm gonna add a little bit more volume here, and overall, the side's gonna go a little bit higher. And he has this little split here from the cartilage all the way around that's more visible as well. So we're gonna make sure that we are getting this a little bit thinner overall. And then we're gonna get the clay buildup at around 3 or 2. And we're gonna just try to split this a little bit more. So we're gonna start from the bottom right here, and you're kind of gonna build like 2 different ones, starting to split around here. And then I'm gonna just open up a little bit more this nostril around here. Oops. Just get a little bit more towards that. And just around this area here, you normally have a little bit of a flat little plane. I'm just gonna make a plane in here and make sure that this wraps around a little bit more. So it creates this little 2-side kind of volumes in there, right? Split in half. And I'm gonna make sure that this is not too pronounced. So I'm gonna create a little bit more of that flat little area I mentioned. Around here, we're gonna bring the nostril up slightly. And then the nostrils are kind of tricky sometimes, you know, because in one hand, like they have to follow the shape of this muzzle area, right? Like it has to be like conforming to it. So basically like it has almost like an echo of it. But at the same time, depending on the type of nose, obviously you're gonna have some that's a little bit more open like that. Some of them are gonna be the opposite like this, right? And the length of the nostril is gonna be different too, depending on the person. But one thing that I'd like to do is to actually treat this as a continuation here. So for example, if you have this line I just started in there, I can continue with it, and I can go all the way around here. And then when I get to the corner, I can kind of do the same, kind of like as a continuous form, you know, instead of something that just breaks abruptly. Just like continue to do a bit more like that and kind of close it up and make sure that's a form that goes all the way around. It's kind of like the frame of this hole in here, nostril. So it's gonna get a little bit more of the smoothing here. Smooth's a little strong, by the way. And then when I get to this corner here, then we're gonna have to see, obviously, according to his own nose, what's happening here. But you're probably gonna have a little bit more of a, oops, a little bit of carved. I can make it very well defined like that and even go beyond that. So basically, like if I have the whole ending right here, I can go here because this is basically like the frame I'm mentioning, right? I can make it very, very well defined like this. Oops. And then I can, this is a bug from ZBrush they never fixed, by the way. If you're using any brush with lazy mouse attached to it, sometimes if you get into a funny angle, it just shoots across the model. And it sucks because sometimes if you're working in HD, it shoots and you know, it's like sometimes you don't even see that it did that, and then it's baked in the model, and then later on, after like an hour working at it, you notice it. It was like, holy crap. So sometimes I actually, when I'm sculpting stuff in fine detail, I try to avoid sometimes, you know, it's like using the lazy mouse just to prevent that kind of problem. And then around here, I can actually leave a little area in here because you get a little bit of, it's almost like a spiral that happens in here. So you get a little bit of this form around here, and then it comes back right here. So you can get a little bit inside of the nostril in there, and then come back as a spiral. Kind of similar to, you know, structure of the ears, right? To get all those spirals in interesting forms. And it's the kind of stuff we take for granted. You know, it's just like, oh, you do the nose from the front and that's done. And then it's always interesting to look from other angles. I'm gonna make a little bit, this guy here is gonna be like a tricky one for me because like I said, like my mental library for what's average is not gonna apply to his face because it's so unusual. So it's gonna be cool to learn with that, you know? And also to force yourself to break some rules, you know, which is cool. You get too attached to rules. One thing I mentioned in the past, like in some of those classes, is that I am a little bit OCD with stuff, you know, I always like that, you know, it's like trying to use like exact numbers, for example, when I type something, whatever, you know. But then it kind of like always kept me from being more free, you know, it's like in doing things a little bit more naturally. And then as soon as I start abandoning that and really going for a more random approach to things, you know, it's like not being concerned about exact numbers anymore. You know, it's like obviously I still use a lot of symmetry in everything because since we're sculpting all those pores by hand, it's only, you don't want to do this twice because trust me, when you start doing all the pores by hand, you only want to do once, you know, with each one of those characters. Otherwise, you're gonna go crazy. Yeah, but everything else, man, I try to be a little bit more random, you know, it's like with the approach to prevent this kind of like artificial look to everything. So I'm gonna go to my intensity a little bit lower than that. And I'm not seeing his this area here in him. I'm gonna try to find some more references for it. But I would say like that this line here from the nasolabial fold, right? It's gonna get a little bit more inflated. In his case, I noticed when he smiles, it goes very super thin around here. So I'm not gonna add a lot of volume. I'm gonna add the volume just enough. And then I'm gonna go and flatten the top part like that, just to create a little bit more of a plane in there, a little definition of the plane. And then around here, I'm gonna go and continue this line over his nose around here. Just add a little bit of that volume and start going like, again, a little bit of a spiral, right? Like everything is rhythm, right? Like I started with that, going that way around the nose. And then here, this goes around here. So at the end, you have like all those interesting lines, right? Like something like, go like that, oops, like that. And then you have that. that goes like around there, right? Everything has rhythm in the face, and trying to keep things interesting without going artificial, it's very tricky, but it's the best approach, you know. It's like to start with, like, for example, soft forms, but then from time to time just introduce a little bit more of you know, squarish forms, so we kind of break that that rhythm, you know, instead of like everything round. Sometimes you look at some models out there, and then you see everything is too round, you know. It's like there is no rhythm, and then it gets a little boring because it looks like you're looking at the Michelin Man. You know, it's like, it's all like, you know, even arms, right? Like, you were talking about biceps and triceps and all this stuff. If you model everything like sausages, right? Like everything has the same kind of like a balloon kind of, you know. It's like those guys who make like all those animal made out of balloons, right? They all have this like sausage kind of look to it. But if you look at an arm, it has lots of offsets, right? Like between one muscle and the other one, there are diagonals. So the, you know, the belly of the muscles are in different spots. They're not like parallel or symmetrical. So in the face, it's going to be the same thing, you know. It's like you're going to have to find areas of offset, you know. It's like to create those rhythms. Otherwise, everything goes very, very boring very soon. So like I said before, around this area here, I'm going to create artificially here just a little line, just to help me to identify this plane underneath, because I want to make sure when the light hits it that I'm able to read what's the top of the nose in here separated from the bottom part, right? So I'm just going to flatten this slightly, and then later you can just smooth it out, just like to mark that's in there, you know, so you know that the forms are in there. I'm gonna make a little bit more flat in here, and then let's go back, take a look, and then around here I can make things a little flatter on the side as well. Instead of using the H polish brush that I used yesterday, I can actually use the smooth brush, that one I mentioned too, which is very, very strong. So it's the stronger, how you call, like the smooth stronger. So this one here, right? And then this guy here is very useful for making things very flat because it's so strong. So if I go around here, look how flat it goes, super fast right there, right? And then obviously for other things, I'm gonna have to relax with it. Otherwise it's gonna get too strong. But then again here, I can do the same thing and introduce like some planes more artificially here, kind of like really mark them like that. And then at the top, I can just use like this very strong smooth, flatten it a little bit. So now I have a very, very flat plane in there. That's a good reference. But obviously, if I want something more natural, I'm gonna go way lower with my smooth here, just smooth it out a little bit. And then there's a lot of very subtle forms when it comes to secondary forms, which basically, like, to me, are some of the, I cannot say like there are some of the most important forms because everything is important, right? Like a primary forms, obviously, they're super important. But I consider like the secondary forms so important because it's the forms where the naturalism is more, you know, is more into. So for example, like if you're working with the primary forms, you can make like a hard surface with primary forms, right? Just like very simple primitives and shapes just to define like the main planes and everything. But the secondary forms is what creates like all this organic feel to everything, right? And the tertiary forms is just the cherry at the top. You know, people like to come and make jokes about my sculpts because of the amount of detail that I put, right? Like there's a lot of pores and everything, and definitely is a big part of you know, that final stretch when you're trying to do something to look more realistic. But the secondary forms, I think, is the part that I put like most of my efforts, you know, to make sure that things read naturally. You know, it's like that those forms, they actually blend together. You know, it's like that things flow in a way that looks more naturalistic, you know. And I think you guys should really put a lot of love in the secondary forms. You can, sometimes you see some models that you can tell that they are going the right direction, but it's just like that the person didn't take the next, the extra step, you know. It's like to add more secondary forms to actually just like create like more interesting shapes, you know. Make sure that those larger folds are being represented, you know. If you look at this other guy that I found before there, let's see, just open as a secondary here. This other little guy with his sister, that's a kind of cool shape that I can introduce, you know, it's like that shape right there, from the zygomatic bone to the zygomatic muscle right there. I mean, like, since I'm gonna be free to mix things and to create a different character instead of like going from Sam, right? Again, like to prevent like any copyright issue, right? I can definitely introduce this kind of stuff later, you know, try to incorporate some of that. It's interesting to see the way that his masseter is represented in there. And very cool as well that there are two different characters and the shape of the neck is very similar, isn't it? He has like, they have like this kind of like longish and thicker neck in comparison to their faces. And then this second chin, right? It's very interesting right there. She has it too, you know, very, very interesting features. They look like cute little gnomes, but very, very, not like in a, you know, it's like in a bad way. Like they're very, very cute, man. It's like, it's just like little dolls. So let's take a look here. For example, I don't see this on Sam, but I can introduce some of those shapes in here since I'm free to do that. And for example, like, let's introduce a little bit more of the secondary shape around here. So secondary forms again. Just gonna introduce a little bit more volume around here. Obviously, it's not the same facial expression, right? Like there's a smile happening here with the open mouth, which he doesn't have in there. And then when you have like the smile with an open mouth like that, there's a lot going on, right? For example, like the overall volume of the muzzle in here is gonna go thinner, right? Like it's gonna press against the teeth. So you're gonna see more of that structure in there. Yesterday I was mentioning the zygomatic muscles in here. I can actually introduce a little bit, although I'm not seeing here in his actual references. I see a little bit more on him in there, so I can actually dig this area here slightly like that, just to create a little bit more of this. It's kind of like a subtle mention of the muscle, but without going too literal, you know. I know that it works great for creature work. You know, it's like a lot of people actually do this like very exaggerated, you know, it's like they go like full on. It like seems like the people are always angry or something. But yeah, again, like for monsters works, right? But for humans, I'd like to treat things very, very subtle, you know, and just add enough so the brain captures it, but without going too literal about it. The human brain is like, it's interesting because we're specialists in seeing humans since we were born, like we were programmed for that. You know, little babies know exactly when a mom or a dad is angry at them or happy with them, right? Like they kind of like, they laugh with you or they cry if they see like a bad face or something like that. They are specialists, they're programmed. It's in our DNA to recognize facial expressions, right? So it's very hard to trick. And you know, it's like it's hard to trick, but once you learn how to trick, you can actually get away with a lot of stuff. You know, it's like you can just introduce certain landmarks that catch the eye of the person. You know, it's like this kind of stuff, like the rhythms I was talking about. Like, yeah, you can see that there's a representation of a cartilage underneath of bone structure. You know, combined with some flexible structures like those ones. If you are careful enough to recreate those things. And then when you get back to the, when you go into the wrinkles and pores and all that stuff, if you're careful enough just to represent just enough for the brain to capture, for the eye to capture that area and recognize as something believable, it should be enough, you know? So let's take a look here, for example. Let's go to this. You're gonna see, like, for example, like the reason why I like to sculpt old people is obviously because they have a lot of stuff you can do with. But in this case here was the model I sculpted for my class in Portuguese in April. You see, like, there's not a lot going on in terms of detail in the skin when it comes like to something super obvious, right? Like all those big folds or anything. But you look at those wrinkles in here, the way it's sculpted underneath the eye, they're subtle enough. And around here as well, you see like there's one, two, another one in there. And then just subtle enough for the eye to capture that as something like, yeah, I understand that as being something that's is believable, you know? Real is a very strong word because since we are doing everything by hand, to achieve something that looks real is going to be impossible. But something believable, we can definitely try to do that. You know, it's like by creating and being smart about where to put the details. You know, you're going to get away with a lot of generic detail in a lot of places in the face, but then from time to time, you're going to introduce some of those micro wrinkles and just to give the directionality. You know, it's like once you have directionality, then you start understanding that there's movement involved. If there's movement involved, you recognize as being someone who is alive, right? And then if you can do that around those areas and have like some realistic eyes, which basically are going to give you like all the you know, the shader presets and everything for you to be able to create something like this, right? So that's basically like the windows of the soul. So that's the most important part of the character. But it's not only that. I mean, like if you have like a character that the skin looks like crap and then the eyes look realistic, still not going to sell, right? So it's basically like it starts in the eyes. So you lock your eyes into the eyes of the character because you're trying to find soul in there. And then if you don't see something that is just as realistic around that area, right? Then it kind of falls apart. So that's why you start with the eye, but then you start like taking care of this area around the eyes to make sure that it looks flashy, looks, you know, nice. And then from that point, we expand and, you know, and try to make everything else look good. But this is going to be like a process. We're going to go through it, the whole thing. And it's always a fun part, you know, it's like, but this part of the process, trying to find the character for me is still one of the most fun ones, you know. Now when you get like to the eye bags in here, like to the lower eyelids, again, like I'm kind of trying to keep a little bit more free since I cannot go too literal with the character. So I can just go here and start imagining a little bit. One thing I noticed, like with older people, you get like those eyes, you see like how puffy they look in there. Like if you're sculpting someone young, the tendency is to do something like this. Let me just try to do it here. So you're gonna go, you're gonna do like, you're gonna build your eyelashes, not the eyelash, the eyelids like this, and you're gonna try to do like a sharper line around there. So you're gonna have an eye that looks very, you know, very sharp in a certain way. But as you get older, you start looking at those eyelids, they start getting a little bit puffier. And then the edges, instead of like having that very visible edge to them, you're gonna start seeing a little bit more of a roundness to it until it meets the eyeball, right? So with this guy, we're gonna be doing the same thing. One thing we can do here is to introduce, let's just add, let's say, make sphere, let's make a polymesh 3D out of this, and just let's append it. Let's get this sphere here. Let's make some eyes for him. Oh, I might have locked. Like looks like the size is not too bad actually. The eyeballs for now, we're not going to be too concerned about it, but we're definitely going to be concerned when you start like actually measuring everything and making sure that the eyeballs have the correct size and rotation as well. Actually, since we are here, we might do this right now, actually. Let's try that. So if you do like any Google search here, if you do like an average size of human, let's do eyeball, something like that. So basically like here it says like 24 millimeters. But it's not like a complete sphere, but for the purpose of making things simpler, we're gonna consider as a sphere. So 24 millimeters, so 2.4 centimeters, right? That's the base, like the size of the eyeball, transverse, right? And then the size of the iris is gonna be roughly half of that. So the iris is gonna be around 12. So it's gonna be 12 millimeters or 1.2 centimeters, right? So we're gonna do this, we're gonna try to average, but again, in his case, it's kind of like a case study, right? We don't know exactly what's the size of the eyeball in there. Because kids, some people say like that kids have the same size eyeball as, you know, as an adult. It's not true, it grows, you know, so it's not by much. In terms of the proportions, right? Like the eyeballs in a baby are much larger than for an adult, but that doesn't mean this is the size of an adult and everything else is going to grow around it. The eyeball also is going to grow. But in his case here, it's hard to tell. I mean, like with the eyeglasses in here, it kind of looks like the size of the iris is very similar to their size, but it's because he's wearing those glasses. Let's take a look. That's the thing I don't have like for comparison, right? Her eyes look quite big here in relation to her face, but again, she's a little kid, you know? So I would consider, in his case, instead of like 24, I think I'm gonna try to consider 20 as being the size for his eyeball. It's gonna make a tiny little bit smaller than the you know, average human, adult human. So I'm just gonna export this one. Let's try this. Let's see, ref1, something like that. Let's bring it to Maya. Ref1. So I have that one. Let's measure it. Let's hide this little guy here. And then let's go from here. Let's create another measure tool here. So let's switch actually, since we were talking about centimeters here. This is setting centimeter, actually millimeter. Let's do in millimeters. And then create measure tools distance. We start around here all the way to here. That gave me, man, I'm so lucky. Look at that. That's about 20. That's perfect. So that, I eyeballed the eyeball. Anyway, yeah, that's a perfect size for it. So that's basically what I need to know. So with that eyeball in there, oops, now I can actually just move it around a little bit. And it's important to have like the eyeballs in place just so you can build the volumes around them correctly, and also make sure that the plane reads correctly. You can tell that those little guys, they have like, they're kind of like forward slightly, right? Like they're not like completely embedded. So they have, they produce more volume around them. There's a little bit more pressure. So I'm gonna keep them a little bit more pronounced than, you know, you would expect. I'm gonna bring a little bit more towards the center in here. There is something about the distance between the eyes as well that we're gonna be talking about. And so let's just do a copy here first. Let's duplicate it. And this duplicate, we're gonna do the formation. And we're gonna mirror it like that. And then now we can actually group those two. Let's do a merge down. Okay, so now they are grouped. So now with them around there, well, obviously we're gonna, you know, be playing around, but you're gonna notice that they shouldn't be, yeah, interesting. In his case here, let's just do something very fast here. Let's just move this around and see what's the distance. Man, that's exactly one eyeball distance. And for an average human adult, we should have a distance between them. One thing that's confusing is that when you're doing like drawings, right? Like normally the distance between the two eyes is exactly a one eye distance, but that's the, you're considering basically the corner of the eye all the way to the caruncular area. And that's actually wider than the eyeball itself because you have like that cover from the caruncula. So in fact, when you have like eyeballs like in a, you know, it's like the real size of the eyeball, you have more than one eyeball distance between those two. Basically like this is kind of like the distance you're going to be seeing, you know, it's like between them. And then the other one is going to be around here, right? So, but in this case here, because he has this unusual kind of proportion, then I'm going to consider that that's going to be okay. That's basically like the eyes are kind of closer together, but I might have to actually move them a little bit more to the side, you know. In fact, I think I might do this just now. I'm going to force it just so I'm more like a little bit happier with the proportions here. Let's do this. Let's do with, let's center this like that. And then let's see if we can do how we do this. It's, we're going to turn off. Let's see, I have the symmetry on. Oh, it's right here, local symmetry. Let's try it that way. Okay, I'm going to just move this to the side right here. And let's try with local symmetry. Oops, like that. There you go. So let's go to this. So I'm going to consider a little bit wider like that. And I'm going to move stuff around to conform to them. So just gonna get to the face again. And again, I'm just like, right now, I'm just like trying to find out things, right? We are not like in the process of making anything perfect just yet. So I'm gonna just bring it a little bit more to the external part, and I'm gonna dig this internal, just like using the Alt and then move. Just gonna dig this a little bit around there. Oh, I'm seeing like the chat in here, guys. Sorry. I'm so bad at looking at the chat. You know, it's like, please, by all means, just like unmute yourselves and then ask anytime you need, okay? How do you handle adjusting the large shape after adjusting the scale in ZBrush? It seems maxed out. I think you look at the preferences under the draw menu in ZBrush. There's a slide called dynamic brush scale that you can turn up. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Link here on Facebook group. Okay, did you get the Facebook group already? It's funny because since yesterday, I didn't hear much of you guys, so I only heard at the end when you said a good night. And I thought like, man, maybe they have some problem with the microphones because you guys are so quiet in there. I had some groups, man, like with some students, like they had to talk a lot, man. And I really don't mind, but it's just interesting. You guys are such a quiet group. Okay, cool. Got the, yeah, awesome. Okay. Anytime you guys need anything, just interrupt me. You know, it's like at this point here, we are basically like 1 hour in the second class, the second lesson. So, you know, it's like normally if I get like 1 hour of information straight away, I'm happy to just like, you know, go back and forth. And if you need me to do any mini tutorial or anything, you know, it's like to explain something that's a little weird, I can definitely do that for you. Just gonna pull this top area here a little up. Interesting, kind of like a almond shape, right? It has a little bit of a sadness to the eyes, which is so cool, man. So very touching, you know. It's like, I think that's the thing that I got fascinated when I saw this, those guys with progeria, you know. It's like, it's such a rare disease. And they have this kind faces, you know. It's like so sweet. And the fact that they're not gonna live very long, you know, it's like they die like before they're 20 normally, and it's very, very sad. So the thing about the eyes is that just the same way I was mentioning yesterday, you know, it's like if you're talking about the zygomatic bone, and I was talking about those echoes, right? Like those forms that wrap around each other and then end in some other place. With the eyes, it's the same thing, you know. It's like you have to always have that in mind, that the comment I made yesterday about like trying to feel the surface when you're sculpting it, and understanding that certain areas are harder. For example, like this bump right there, right, are harder than this surface that's in here. The thinner you get, like the wrinkles, the thinner basically like the skin is gonna feel, right? So if I do like very big folds in here, obviously it's gonna look like a very a rough and thicker skin, right? But you're gonna go like even thinner than what I have, which is just a sketch in there. But for the eye, it's gonna be the same deal. I mean, like if you have an eyeball, and the eyeball, although it's not something like solid, right? Like it has some cushion, right? Like you are able to actually press your eyeball and feel it. If you press like with your closed eyes, you feel that it actually gives up a little bit. It's kind of like rubbery. But still it's much more dense than the skin itself. So when you get to the eyelids themselves, right, it's almost like they are about to bulge out, right? Like the eyelids are keeping it in place right there. But some people can actually expand and make the eye completely pop out of the socket in there, right? But the cool thing is that, you know, it's like you have to, when you're sculpting the eyelids, try to represent an echo of that eyeball, you know? It's almost like an offset to it. So right now we're just like, again, like we're just like in the sketch phase, but slowly you're gonna be bringing this, for example, like this area here back. So he actually has a little bit of that, you know, it's like a echo of the eyeball. So kind of like an offset. And the offset is also happens, there's a little bit of angle, right? Like, so the top eyelid is normally a little bit more forward than the lower one. So we're gonna have kind of like a, I'm not gonna say 45 degrees, but there's definitely like some angle in here happening. So I'm gonna bring this area forward, and I'm gonna bring this little thing here down because we're just sketching for now. Later on, we're gonna be cleaning up this whole mess. But we're gonna make sure that from the profile, we get a little bit of that, you know, it's like a little bit of this angle right there. This area here, I probably have it too shallow, so I'm gonna bring it out a little bit and probably like this entire area. Another thing in ZBrush, if you maxed out the size of your brush, you know that thing, right? That you can just double click with Shift this, right? The dynamic, and then it kind of like expands it, and now it's a dynamic size, so it can go like all the way much bigger than that. I'm just gonna go and bring this forward around here. And make sure that I do this on that angle as well. Right, so it starts getting a little bit more human because as soon as you start putting those landmarks, you know, it's like in paying attention to those things, like those little offsets, you know, for eyelids and things like that, the pressure that comes from the eyelid to the eyeball, all those things started to make the character come to life. You know, it's like, it's kind of like a slow process, but yeah, eventually the character pops, you know, if you keep doing that kind of stuff. So right now, I'm just gonna keep it around there. And then let's see here what we have. So now I'm kind of like looking at this guy instead of looking at Sam, right? I'm gonna expand the size of the eyes just a little bit. Just make sure it reads a little bit bigger. I have this tendency of making the eyes very tiny, right? It's a little bit of style, but also, you know, maybe perhaps a little problem that I have with the proportions, I don't know. But I have to sometimes force myself to grow the size of the eyes. I think it comes from this thing about liking, you know, it's like at work we do creatures and stuff, and the creatures with tiny eyes, especially tiny eyes, very spread out, very far apart. They always look weird and cool. So kind of like, you know, we kind of learn to do that, and then it ends up like polluting your humans, you know. And then here, I'm gonna make sure that that little echo that I'm talking about, it makes sense, right? Like if I have those lines all over the place like that, right? It doesn't make any sense. But if I have something that's more organized, that looks like there's tension, which is very important, right? To represent tension. So I'm gonna add my eyelid in there. But I wanna make sure that those lines here, they read a little bit more straight like that. Make sure that, you know, it's like, it's kind of like a band. Imagine like a piece of tape, right? That's wrapped around there and has that tension going on. A little bit more of that. And then let's take a look at some other elements in here. Just keep it like this for now. Probably like this area right around here. Let's see, let's just define the eyelid a little bit more. And then just around here, I'm gonna make things a little deeper. Make sure that it reads like there is actually a cavity in there, right? The cavity is an interesting, like the orbital cavity. If you look at the book that I mentioned yesterday, Anatomy of Facial Expression by, his name, Aldis Zarims, right? It's a very, very good book. There is a lot of very cool tricks to learn how to understand, like, and differentiate, like, between men and women. And one of them is like the orbital cavity, which is like, in the case of men, is a little bit more squarish. So you get like something, if I draw in here, it's a little bit more like on the squarish side of things, right? And for women, is a little bit more like rounder, right? It has something like that. But it's cool to know what it is, you know. It's like, so, oh, see the ZBrush freaked out in there. So if I have something like this, I'm gonna know that around here, I'm gonna have like my eyebrow line, it's gonna be around there, that this is gonna be the cavity in here. And if I have the cavity in here, then I know that I have my bone structure coming on the side in here and turning to the zygomatic, right? So it's important to know where the cavity is in here, so we can actually start like digging this area to make it a little bit deeper, right? It's very important to have it represented, especially around the internal area here and the sides. You know, it's like the easiest part way is obviously touching your own face, right? I made my kids do that because the other day they were looking at this book and they are like 6 and 9, and they are starting to get very curious about this stuff. So they are looking at skulls in the book, and then I mentioned, oh, try to find in your own face, just press around your eyes and try to find where the cavity is, where it goes. You know, it's like where it gets very shallow and where it gets more buried, and they're very fascinated by that. So yeah, let's do a little bit more of that. I'm gonna dig this area here a little bit more. Do some undoing there. Let's see. I'm gonna dig around here just to start revealing this cavity a little bit more around there. And the interesting thing I don't know about this condition, progeria, is that we have like all those fat pads underneath the skin, right? And the fat pads, if you're like someone young, you're probably going to have like a very kind of like soft and it's like rounder features in your face, especially like a teenager. You know, someone who obviously who's not emaciated, someone who is fairly well in the nutrition department, right? But then as you get older, all those fat pads, they shrink and they start revealing more of the bone structure underneath. And I wonder if with those guys with progeria, if that happens with them as well. You know, it's like because there's so much muscle being revealed in here that I would think that all the fat pads that they have in this skin, under the skin, shrank just like an older person would do, you know, because that's basically what I'm seeing there. It's like a lot of it's like bone and muscle structure being revealed, and that makes me think that the fat pads are kind of like shrinking in a very early age, which is interesting. So let's just do a little bit more. I'm gonna just register a little bit of the brow ridge in here. I'm gonna go around, and I'm gonna try to define these little corners here a little bit more. But I'm not gonna go like completely like a zombie skull-like, you know. I'm gonna try to keep him a little bit more on the rounder kind of side of things because I want to make sure that he looks, like cute in a way. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more of that structure in there, and then when I get to this area, I can actually make things a little bit more round and with a little bit more volume just around here. The thing about the tablet that's a little funny is that I'm sculpting, and when I'm sculpting here, I'm actually covering part of it. So it's kind of like, you know, unless I sculpt in a very funny angle, sometimes I have to do it a little bit blind and then go back. But I'm kind of used to it. And then here, I mean, like I can start, even if I'm not seeing in there, I can start splitting this area here, right? And creating a little bit more of this volume, very, very subtle, and creating this kind of like triangle right around here. There's a triangle that's formed, right? It's kind of like, it starts with the eyebrow. I can actually dig the eyebrow a little bit more right around here. And then I can build up some of the form around there. And stretch it. You can come all the way around and up. And then just smooth it out. Just to have a little bit of a mention of that difference in form, right? Like I said, I really like to do things in a very subtle way. I know, like, especially people that come from traditional, you know, it's like they really make things very, very visible first, and then they shave it and start like removing things. I do the opposite, you know, it's like I start building up the forms slowly until I'm happy with it. And then doing that whole process, there's a lot of room for subtlety, you know. But I'm not gonna say one way is better or worse. It's just like the way you feel more comfortable, you know. You saw how messy my first sketch is, you know. It's like I start like more concerned about putting enough form, just like a sculptor would be, you know, putting a lot of clay and just like building up the masses first, and then started like to actually pay attention to the form. That's kind of the way I do, you know. It's like I just put a lot of digital clay in there, and then I start figuring it out as I go. So not really the smartest way, but And the funny thing is, like, I try to reproduce the stuff I do, you know, it's like from different classes, and it's always different. You're gonna look through all of them. Some of them I start from a cube with, you know, some lines, you know, to help me with the proportions from the get-go. Some of them is just like a very loose sketch, like this one from yesterday. And it's just like have no, you know, right way to do it. It's just like I go by feel. That's the thing that's interesting, you know. It's like because CG is so flexible, you can go for the feel straight away. You know, it's like you can try to capture the soul from the get-go without being too concerned about like, okay, I have to nail the proportions from the get-go. You know, it's like because the proportions you can just push and stretch and make things work. Like you know, it's like enforce the character to have the proportions you want. Even later on, after you kind of figure out a couple of individual elements, like you figure it out like the nose or the eyes, then you organize things. You know, it's like and push and move stuff around. It's very different from traditional work for sure. You know, much more flexible for sure. There's one thing I noticed about his mastery yesterday. I was looking at one of those, this guy here, and it's a little bit confusing because in one side, like he obviously has this shadowing here that's actually throwing me a little off, the shadow from the glasses, but he has this interesting double line and how stretched his ear is in there too. So I'm gonna try to represent that, although it's a different facial expression. Try to capture a little bit of that, you know. I think it's kind of like an interesting element. So you see, like I have a little bit of that around here that goes towards there. I can actually make this line a little bit more visible. And then I'm gonna break this into 2 volumes. And again, it might be part of an artifact from the shadowing there, but in this case here, I don't mind because it's such a cool feature, you know. So I'm gonna split this one in 2. And I'm gonna build some of this volume around here. Not by much, I have to make sure that from the front it still works. I'm gonna build this. And I'm gonna remove some of this volume from underneath here. And then add a little bit of that web right around there. So I'm just gonna add some of that. This is a starting point. So now let's just build up. I love clay build up, man, because it's really, if you use with intensity of 2 or 3, it's really like sketching, you know. It's like you just like do very thin passes like I do. If you're trying to define like larger areas, you can use like a larger brush and just go like in a single direction like that multiple times, like that, right? Like for muscle especially. But then if you're defining areas like this, it's just like you do like one direction, then you cross it, go the other direction. And all of a sudden you get like a very organic volume in there, you know. And it's very cool because the clay buildup respects the boundaries of the rest of the forms. If you're using like a regular standard brush, it tries to mix things together, you know. It's like, so if you're going like towards like a cavity like this, it's gonna try to fill up the cavity, but it's gonna affect the next form. But the clay buildup respects that, so I can keep working on here, and that form is not affected. In fact, it creates a little bit of a pinch right in the middle for me, just like I want, you know. It's like I want to make sure that the forms read like if they're having some kind of collision between each other, you know. So, and now for the ear is another interesting one, right? Because first we're gonna have to blend this area to create more of that little plane in there. But also we're gonna have to pay attention to the silhouette because it's very, you know, unusual shape. So we're gonna have to go around here, gonna pull it out, see how far it goes out. And again, I'm gonna have to double check from different angles, right? Because it's gonna be different, all of them. Let's bring this area forward a little bit. And then this is gonna go in a little bit like that. And again, like with the clay build up, I can start actually sketching this a little bit more. So we're gonna start by cutting this area around here, and it's gonna go kind of like a nice spiral, like I mentioned before. And then so we're gonna start like digging this area around there, and then we're gonna start creating this hole in here. So we're gonna dig this area. Oh, there you go, ZBrush. deeper. If I want to go faster, just move brush and then Alt. So you can actually use things to create things a little bit faster for you. Set a little hole in there. And then let's go back in here. Make this whole area a little bit shallower here. And then start spiraling from here. And then I'm gonna make this area deeper as well. Down here, I have to build this one up. And then with the move brush, we can definitely do more work in there. So the spiral comes all the way and goes inside here. We're not seeing there. That's basically what happens, right? It comes around here. So we're gonna have a couple of different areas. Let's use this carve brush. So we're gonna separate this area here. And then let's dig this out as well. This out, and then more volume overall for this form right here. Kind of like breaking the profile. In his case, I mean, like the cartilage really is very predominant in there. And then remove some of this volume right here. And the interesting thing here is that first he has the cartilage very evident around here, framing the entire area. But then let's just pull this one up slightly here, close this little gap in there. I'm gonna bring the rest of the spiral. All those things have names, right? I just never memorized them, but all those things have names. Like there's a whole complex anatomy of the ear, you know, everything has their own little names and tragus and blah, blah, blah. So up a little bit. And then when you get to this area here, let's make sure that this breaks the profile even further. Bring it down right here. And it's interesting because it has that little form in there. I mean, like there's shadow and all that crap, right? Like you don't know exactly. It seems like there is almost like a little hook. Let's subdivide one more here just to see. So it's almost like there's a little hook that starts in here and then encases the cartilage in there. I'm just gonna do like a very strong drawing of that. Put some more volume in here. And then build up this thin kind of cartilage, breaking up the profile. And then this corner has to come up and hide a little bit more. Smooth it out. Smooth it out through here. If it gets too extreme, obviously, you have plenty of space to fix that. But it's just like to get this feel of things here. Then it seems like there's a little form that actually breaks around here. It comes a little bit more squarish at the corner. So it's almost like cartilage in here, and then this pops out a little bit more squarish around here. Hard to tell, right? Just like looking at a very low resolution picture. But eventually when you start looking at the other ones, the puzzle comes together. And then we're gonna be able to decipher what's going on with his ear in there. I'm gonna bring this one closer here. And then a couple of volumes here, for example, like that volume right there, kind of like almost blends with the ear, right? So those are the cool secondary forms I talk about, you know, it's like those, basically like when one form meets the other one, you know, it's like the collision between them, how things get more organic, you know, it's like I started looking and I was like, huh, I can understand that there is a structure underneath that's actually making things, you know, pop in a certain way. So that's why I say like that the secondary farms are so important to create this realistic feel, you know, to characters. Just like subtle stuff, like very, very important. And then we're gonna bring this out, and the hole actually, the ear here, goes all the way and it's hidden behind this, right? It's well protected and they're encased. It goes behind this whole thing. And this is basically like the shield right there. Because we definitely, just like the eyes, right? We have this super fast muscles that close the eyelids when something is about to hit our eyes, which is amazing. I guess like it's one of the fastest muscles we have. With the ears, we need protection. Otherwise, always gonna have crap in there. I watched there's a show, a TV show called Alone, which is really cool. They drop those guys in a, kind of like in a forest or like by the ice or something like that. And they have to survive for as long as they can. And just like, you know, in areas full of like bears and, and you know, it's like mountain lions and stuff and wolves, you know, it's pretty scary stuff. A lot of them tap out like within hours because of, you know, it's like they start walking around their camp and they see like fresh bear poop and it was like, I'm out of here, you know. So they go back to their families. But yeah, I forgot what I was going with it. No, there's a guy actually in one of the last episodes of the current season. It was the current season? I think it is, yeah. So there is I think it's like, I don't know if it's a bee or some insect gets into his ear, man, and it drives the guy insane. And he gets it out with, obviously, with like some water that pours in there and everything. But it's the kind of stuff, you know, it's like if you don't have some protection in your ear, you're always going to have something inside of it, you know. So that's why you have the little shield in there, kind of like protecting things. It's a very cool show if you guys have the chance to see. It's like, it looks pretty real, you know. It's like most of the you know, it's like this reality TV is bullshit, but that one looks pretty real because you can see guys getting really hurt, you know. It's an episode that's this lady, she's fishing and she managed to actually throw the fish hook underneath her tendon in her hand. And it's pretty crappy because like you can see like she's trying to pull it out and you see the tendon moving underneath. It's like, man, very freaky. And then she keeps like very strong, like for I think 24 hours trying and trying. And then at some point she's like, yeah, this is gonna get infected. There's no way I can get it out. So she had to tap out. But it's freaking real, you know. Another one was like chopping some wood like for some fire and then managed to chop one of her tendons as well. Like so you hit the axe for her hand. I was like, holy crap, that's not. Yeah, it's like, it's a cool show, man.
What's the name of it?
Alone. Yeah, it's a very cool one, man. You should, and it's very addictive too, you know. It's like they have like 7 seasons now. You can start with the season 1 to check it out. But the cool thing is that the season 1, a bunch of those guys were just idiots, you know. It's like they're trying to figure out how to stay, but not a lot of experience. But as the show goes on, they get more and more people with experience, like people who actually teach survival skills, you know, it's like in the jungle or something. And so the guys doing this show right now, they're very skillful. I mean, like people like amazing hunters, you know, and man, getting like big game in the middle of the show. There's a guy who actually, he killed an ox with a knife, man. He actually got you know, it's like a bow and arrow, and he actually hit the ox, and then the ox was kind of like getting slower and slower, and then he had to go with the knife, and then he had food for a long time. Yeah, it's like a couple of animals they don't allow to kill. Of course, like their foxes, I think they're all protected and everything. But when the population is pretty high, they allow them to kill, but obviously it's for their own survival. Otherwise, you know, they're not going to be able to stay there. But yeah, so if you're like a animal lover, maybe not the best show for you. But if you're kind of like survivalist, then yeah, then it's a cool show.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a question and kind of a comment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I love that show too, and I actually know one of the guys on that show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
He was in season 2. His name was Mike Lowe.
Uh-huh.
My father and I did a like wilderness survival thing with him years and years ago. And then
man, that's awesome.
My girlfriend and I were watching this show, and he came up, and I was like, oh my God, I know that guy.
That's
Um,
really cool.
uh, I had a question, I guess not about this
Mhm.
exactly, but about the HD geometry thing.
Okay.
Um, do you have any idea if there's a button for the, you know how you hit A to set on your model where you want it to subdivide further to the HD geometry? Do you have any idea if there's a way to change that? Like,
To subdivide further.
your brush on the model and you hit A, and then it's like it
Uh-huh.
makes it ready to sculpt. Is
Yeah.
there any way to change that to a different key or something? Uh,
That's a good question, man. I don't know actually, but considering that ZBrush is so flexible with like changing hotkeys and stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a way. Um, I tell you like that. I hacked like a ZBrush for a friend of mine, like at work at ILM, because I know how to program with auto hotkey. I don't know if you're experienced with it. And auto
oh,
hot,
okay.
yeah, auto hotkey. I mean, like it's a very powerful thing. You know, it's like people use for games and stuff, and you can actually remap keys for any type of stuff. So what I did, I created a wrapper for ZBrush, and then I changed a bunch of like shortcuts and stuff that we could not figure it out how to do, and I reprogrammed them with auto hotkey. And then the funny thing is that I made that file available for him as a wrapper. And then I think Marco, another one of our artists, he found the file and he downloaded it and he was trying to use it. Like, what's going on with this? Like, all those keys are all messed up. I was like, yeah, because this is custom for Lenny to use, you know. But yeah, what I'm saying is that we might have a way to do it ZBrush itself, but if there is no way, I would give a shot, you know, it's like to a software like that, you know, it's like you can actually remap keys.
Okay, I may give that a shot. I think I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to. I think I'm gonna have to go ahead and like upgrade you to. I don't have 2021 yet, but in just my trying to get that changed, I've somehow managed to screw up ZBrush's default hotkeys.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've been messing with it today, and I just got it reset to the the ones that it ships with, and now certain things don't work. Like when I hit B to pull up like the brush menu,
Yeah.
I don't get anything.
Huh.
So I think I might just have to do a little fresh install.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, like there is this, huh, interesting. I don't have anything stored, but there's a restore there. Did you try all this stuff here in the hotkeys? Try to restore like an
So the
old.
restore just restores back to the whatever is saved in the Z
Ah,
startup thing
huh?
under your public document steel.
Yeah.
And one of the developers there, I don't know whose it is, their name.
Hmm.
It's Marcus Civis in the ZBrush
Oh yeah,
Central
Marcus
forums.
Civis. Yeah, he was the programmer for multi-map exporter.
Yeah, he says in here to like reset it to the default hotkeys that ZBrush ships with. You just need to delete the text file and it will recreate them.
Uh-huh.
And so I did that because I was trying to just get my A key back because I have it set to something else. And now everything's a little wonky.
Oh, really? Didn't work, huh?
Well, now I have A, so the HD geometry works, but now a bunch of the other hotkeys don't work.
Oh man, and the thing is, like Marcus is one of the most knowledgeable guys I know in there. I mean, I don't think he's like well, he's a programmer. He's more like a script guy. He does a lot of stuff through scripting, and yeah, but he is around for such a long time. I'm surprised that he didn't figure it out that for you.
It was from someone else's question. I think I'm just going to try upgrading to the next version and starting from the default.
Yeah, yeah, man. Try like a fresh install. You know, it's like yeah, definitely. But otherwise, just like open a ticket. You know, those guys are pretty good at responding to that. But yeah, man. Good luck.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like ZBrush. I mean, like I've been working with it for such a long time. This version like of 1.55b, which is based like 2003, something like that, 2002, 2003. And but you know, normally it works fine for me. Like I don't have like since I don't use a lot of hotkeys, I kind of like keep everything very vanilla. Especially like the reason why I have everything so not custom in my ZBrush is all the conferences I did in the past. You know, it's like I would have to go and then sometimes like I have to bring all my hotkeys and all that crap, and sometimes it's a computer that's not mine. So I just like learn how to live with everything like you know, default. So I don't change a lot of that stuff. So not like the best person, but definitely those guys at Pixelogic can help with that. Did you guys try the new clothing stuff in ZBrush? I did like a very, very fast experiment, just like simulating something collapsing. But yeah, but I'm not sure. Let's see, get this guy here. Let's see what happens if you do it with him, with the floor collision here. Let's see, gravity, what, 5? A little bit too slow, huh? Yeah, it's too slow. It's shrink. He is going down, but I think it's because my resolution is not the greatest right there. And I don't want to destroy what I did here for sure. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, let's just save it here before I destroy it. And then let's go command edit. Oh yeah, that's the only redo. So let's just save my file first. ZBrush, no history. So what I want you guys to do this week, I mean, like it's try to keep going with your sketches, you know, it's like as far as you can. My sketch by the end of the week, by Thursday, it should be something that's a little bit more polished than that, obviously, right? But not by much. I mean, like it does. You don't have to have like the proportions completely nailed just yet. It can be something that's close enough, you know. It's like I would say like something that has like the eyelids in place, the openings are in place, you know. It's like for the mouth here, for example, I'm gonna make deeper, right? And then the other thing you're gonna need is a base mesh. I put one like for download, like I mentioned in the website. So if you go to your, where is it? Did I close it? Let's open it again. Let's see. Fotw Studio. And so basically, like if you go to your classroom, let's go to Zoom, August, yes. So right here in the welcome letter, right? So you have books and everything, and you should have, let's see, welcome, right here. There's a download in here, right? So this one here has a base mesh, and it's very simple. I mean, like it was done in Z-Remesher, so it's not something you can fully trust, let's say. There is a little Maya studio lighting setup that's kind of like a starting point, and the base mesh is both in OBJ and ZTL. It's something that's workable, you know. It's like you can definitely like work with this if you don't have anything to work with. So a little help in there. But if you have a model that is a better topology, by all means use that, you know. And also for in this case here, if you want to change the topology of it or maybe Z-remesh it again, you know, it's like I can show you some tricks about how to Z-remesh and get like a semi-decent model at the end. You know, it's like you can use polygroups, for example, and force Z-remesher to use these polygroups. But we're going to do this more towards the end of the week. But for now, I think like between yesterday and then tomorrow, which is Wednesday, I just want you guys to have fun with the sketches. You know, it's like don't worry too much about nailing the proportions, but make sure that things are good enough. You know, it's like you know, it's like if you have like something that looks completely wonky, right? There's like, you know, it's like unless it's your intention to create something like that, right? Then by all means go for it. But otherwise, try to make sure that things are cohesive. You know, it's like it's just like proportions are good enough because on Thursday we're going to be using ZWrap to actually do the projection into the base mesh. If you don't know how to use ZWrap or you, by any means like you don't have access to ZWrap at all, then I can make available like one of my old videos, which is one of those classes at the very beginning that has like the whole process done by hand, which is basically like just like selectively, just like select one area and then project all, select another one, project all. So it's like manual labor, you know. But ZWrap is such a cool software that does a lot of stuff automatically for you that I would strongly recommend to do it. The cool thing about ZWrap is that obviously if you work for a company, you're probably gonna have access to it, right? But if you don't work for a company and you're just a student, you can get like a free version in there. Let's see. So if you go to download, let's see, download, you have ZWrap, and then let's see, where is ZWrap? At the top. The ZRAP 30 days for free. Yeah, 30 days for free. I think that's it. But there is a place here which always had this thing about like indie and students. Okay, students. So if you go here, it says RAP and ZRAP are free for students, universities, and schools. The license can be used and learn for learning purposes only. So obviously, if you are making money with it, right? They expect you to pay for it. But if you're a student, you only want to use it for the purpose of this class here. The guys over there, they know me. They know the school. They actually were very generous a couple of months ago. You know, it's like they gave us like 30 licenses for the students to use. But now they have this in there. So the only thing you have to do is just go over there and say like request a license, right? And then just mention like that you work, you're the university school, you put like Fly on the Wall Productions, right? Like, which is our class. And you can even mention in the comment, like it's the class with Chris Costa, you know, it's like they definitely gonna give you the license for free. So you can use it for your studies, which is really cool. So hopefully nobody's gonna be without the license. All right, so let's go back here and let's do a little bit more sculpting. Let's explore a little bit more of those forms in here. A very cool one that I noticed in here is how, you know, it's like at least when he's looking up, look at the cavity that's caused right there underneath the socket, right? Like right here in the socket. That's not gonna happen when he's looking down, obviously, because when he looks down, there's a little bit of a stickiness, right? Like, so the eyelids gonna stick to the eyeball just slightly. So when he looks down, you're probably gonna have a little bit more of that bulge that I have in there, right? Because they kind of like, it pulls the skin and makes this whole area fill up a little bit more. Now, when he looks up, so this whole thing here rotates together with the eyeball, and then you're gonna get a little bit more of that depression, right? But this angle shows a couple of different things in here. So let's take a look at, let's say, his nose, for example. Let's make sure that we have the right length. So we're gonna pull it a little bit further, like that. Around here, again, like it's gonna be a different facial expression, but his chin seems like it's a little bit more separated from this area here. So let's try to get, maybe let's just carve it from underneath just to get a little bit more of the separation in here. I'm gonna create this little ball in here. The chin is an interesting one because it's created with 3 different volumes, right? Like I mean, like the muscles underneath, if you look at them, they don't actually quite look like that. But when you look at the surface of the forms, it's basically like you have like a center area that looks like this. Like you have a little ball right here. And then you have those side supports in here, right? So if you create this like in a very subtle way, I'm gonna create this little central little sphere in here, little ball, and then I'm gonna support it with those little side volumes in here. It's more likely you're gonna get something that looks more naturalistic than simply having like one single volume, you know. That's the whole thing I mentioned about you know, the importance of all those secondary forms to create like more interest, you know. It's like when the light hits it, you can tell that, you know, the form's a little bit more complex than someone would just simply sculpt by just using one single form in there. So I'm gonna do that. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more a chin in there, a little bit deeper, perhaps. Again, like still like in the process of studying, right? Like his face. A lot of stuff is completely wrong, I'm pretty sure, and a lot of stuff is gonna be surprisingly in place all the way through. It always happens, you know, it's like you get some stuff to look fairly in place, and a lot of stuff is completely wrong. But you only learn as you observe more and more the subject. What those guys like who do caricatures do, a couple of them actually I've seen doing that. They study the subject before you can do like one that actually looks really good, right? So they do a bunch of little sketches of, you know, trying to find out like the areas they can exaggerate a little bit more until they actually go for it, and you know, they have a knowledge of the form, and then they can actually exaggerate things and create something more interesting, right? It's the same thing around here. I mean, like there's no way you can go for and create something interesting from the get-go without knowing the subject, right? So we have to study the subject and see all those structures, you know, it's like how things are interacting with one another. The other one that's interesting is that, you know, it's like this whole area of the neck. I'm gonna bring this up, I'm gonna make a little bit more flat in here. And then you see like there's this whole area here that has a couple of interesting forms. It has like these like a two forms here, right? Like it splits around there. And then this one becomes almost like an extra form in here, right? That goes up there. And then for the back of the head, kind of like it has this very thin skin that actually folds around there, right? I'm just gonna bring this a little bit more stretched. Let's see if I can actually pull this out like that. So this whole area seems like, you know, it's like sketch on the surface, right? I can just, it's like we do with clay, just a little bit of just like mark some areas here to help us out later. A little bit of the wrinkling there, and then this area gonna fill up. So let's separate things here a little bit. So I'm gonna cut this area around here. I'm gonna come with it a little bit further. Now he's gonna have his jowls here, right? It's a little bit of tiny jowls, which is kind of funny to talk about that when you're talking about the 17-year-old, right? Like it's such an interesting character. So let's go and cut it in here to reveal the jowls a little bit more and add some more form around there. So we're gonna remove this area in here altogether, make this jawline a little bit weaker. And then I'm gonna fill up this area here. A little bit more form. And then those two split areas. Add a little bit more in there, in here. Take this a little bit more. And smooth it out a little bit, just to get a little bit more of a blend. There's a little stretchy area here as well. And all this stuff here, if I'm lucky, I can actually save another, let's see, 1400. I can save another time lapse, you know. Oh, talking about time lapse, I can show you that too. Let me just show you what I did yesterday. Yeah, I think I'm gonna be able to go like basically like the whole class today was recorded because I started with that removing that history, right? And then now things got a little lighter. So let's just save this one so I'm not at risk of losing anything. And let me just show you what I did for my time lapse, because sometimes people ask, you know, it's like, how do you do for the camera to stay in place, right? So the first thing I do, I find like a camera angle that I like, and then I go to draw, and all the way down here to draw, you can say like store camera, right? So there's a Sammy camera here, which now is not gonna work anymore because I changed the size of the face, right? Like I changed the size of the head, we rescaled everything, but that's basically what it was right here. The Sammy camera, this was the one. So if I wanna do like save another Sammy camera, I can just do it like that. Just make sure, let's see, zoom out like that. I'm gonna make sure that I have like the entire screen like that. Right, that's just actual, okay. So, and then I can just save right here, draw. I can just say like store camera again. I'm gonna save on top of the same one. So now if I move around, do anything I want, like keep sculpting, right? At some point, if I wanna go here, just click same camera. Oh, I guess I'm gonna have to give another name. Let's try that. Like it didn't understand completely. Let's try store cam. Let's try sim camera 2. Let's try that. Oh, there you go. Now it pops right back that. So that's the first thing I do because I want to make sure I can keep doing like multiple sessions. And then if I need to actually attach those videos one to another one to create a single seamless, movie, I can do that way. And then once I have that in place, so if I click on that and it pops back right there, you can go to movie, and then there are a bunch of settings in here. By default, ZBrush starts like that, window and medium. So the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna change to document and large, and that's gonna capture the entire screen instead of just like a little window. And then let's start from the bottom here, title image. You can just like zero everything, overlay image, zero everything here too. So the opacity for the logo, unless you wanna show ZBrush logo, right? Timeline, you don't need to mess with this. Right? Just modifiers. So modifiers in here, you're gonna go to camera path smooth. You can leave it the way it is, or you can just zero. But this is the most important one. So this one you zero it, this one you zero, zero, and then no turntable. So turn off the Y X, and that's basically it. So what I did here is just like turn off the title image. Oops. Title image. Overlay, turn off the opacity, and then for the modifiers, you turn off the Y, and then zero all the ages in here, like H, right? And then switch to document and large. Once you have that in place, you just go all the way back to your history to the first frame, and then you just press forward history, this one, and then it's gonna create the movie for you, right? But the movie is not gonna be saved. Once you have the movie completely generated, then you're gonna have to click H for exporting in high quality, and then click export. It's gonna export like a impact for you, and then you have the file in there. I do that way because one thing that annoys me is when you do a lot of sculpting sessions, and then you try to fit up everything in this 1 minute, which basically like is the limit for Instagram, right? It's 1 minute. Now they have that other feature, you can actually post like longer videos, and then you can watch like a TV or something. But I normally post like 1 minute clips. But if I'm doing like a whole session, I'm spinning around all the thing, right? And when you compress that time to just 1 minute, all you can see is like this, it's like people like having like some issues like watching it, it's like and having convulsions or something. So I keep like steady, it's like I find an angle, for example, I can do like a front or a profile or something like that, right? And then the thing that happens, even after you export it, you're still gonna have the movie file stored in memory. So either you delete it once you have it done, you can delete after you export it, or you can just keep going, It's like, so when you run it again, when you do another movie, it's gonna automatically attach to that one, the previous one, and then you can export again. It's gonna be combining basically like the first and the second one. You can keep going, It's like you can do multiple ones. Until we press delete, you're gonna keep like basically like attaching one movie file to the next one. So yeah, that's just a little thing there. So for the cranium here, let's take a look a little bit closer to that angle in there, and then the back of it seems like this area here can go a little bit higher. And the volume itself, seems like he has a little bit more volume underneath here. It's the kind of stuff we're gonna be searching, right? And then basically I'm gonna lift this a little bit, maybe add a little bit more volume in here. Move a little bit of this volume right there. For a second, I thought I had my symmetry off. And then you have like this flat area right here. Which makes like this little area here pop. Right around there, pop. And then I can go bigger with the volume overall around here. I think Adam did a really good job with the volumes and everything. He's like, seems like he's a specialist with monsters and stuff. I was looking at his portfolio, very, very nice stuff. So it's kind of like, yeah, you got it. But in my case here, I'm kind of like going slower than you, man. You're gonna be finished before I am. Maybe a little bit more of that. the whole thing here is to actually, you know, when you look at the silhouette, right? You look like, the cool thing about ZBrush, now you can see the silhouette there in that little thing, little thumbnail, is that, you know, the volumes is the kind of stuff that I keep exploring for a while, you know, and getting all of them in place, like, really takes me a while. I'm not like a super fast guy who actually nails everything from the get-go, you know, but I'm pretty insistent, so I keep going, you know. I think that's the difference between me and some guys, you know, is that some people, like, they nail like some forms like from the get-go and then they kind of stop. But I'm gonna be pushing Adam to finish this thing now. Now that he kicked my ass, now he's gonna have to finish the work. All the pressure on Adam. It's a really, really cool work, man. I really love what you did. Let's see. Just try to blend this area a little bit more. Again, it's the kind of stuff that I'm looking at one lighting situation here, right? So under that lighting situation, it kind of like makes me kind of understand those forms as being like two forms blended together, right? Like it kind of like, it blends around here. It's almost like this division for the jaw. It's not quite there, right? But again, maybe if I switch the light slightly, all those forms pop in a different way. So that's why it's so tricky. You know, it's like working with likeness is not an easy task because there's camera problems that we saw, like, you know, it's like different camera lenses being used. And then there's like the whole anatomy that's completely complex underneath. And then one facial expression changes everything, right? So the nose, if you have a smile, like the corners of the nose gonna be raised, right? They're gonna be a little bit higher than you expect. You know, it's like this area here is gonna be flatter, right? There's a lot that goes on. But at the end of the day, we have to try the best we can and just like try to add some life to the character. You know, it's like that's what ends up selling the character at the end. Is either the character looks alive or it doesn't. And you know, and if the character looks alive, whoever is watching looking at your work is gonna connect. You know, it's an interesting thing. You know, it's like this thing about connection with the digital form of art. You know, because I mean, like I was raised like watching like horror movies and very fascinated with that kind of stuff. And then you get in touch with media that's completely cold, right? Like people have this impression that computers are cold, right? It's a cold media. But in fact, it's just as cold as the person behind it, right? Behind the commands in there, because you can make something very expressive. I mean, just look at the ZBrush Central and all the work being done, like in our group, for example, right? Like a lot of amazing work, very much alive, the characters, you know, and that's what's gonna make a difference, you know, because as humans, we want to make sure that we can connect with something, right? Like we want to connect with other humans, unless you're like me, in which you know, it's like I'm very talkative when I'm teaching those classes, and then when I'm not teaching classes, I go into hiding in the mountains, right? No, not really. I have my 2 kids and my wife. We talk a lot, but I'm not like the most social person, you know. It appears I'm very social because I'm, you know, like posting in forums and things like that forever, but I'm pretty much a introspective, you know, introvert. Let's take a look. Got some more of this stuff here. Yeah, that volume that I added yesterday of the processing here was pretty much like was higher because I, you know, I start pulling stuff. It ended up like down here, so I'm gonna just like blend it a little bit more, and the process is gonna be probably like around there, and then basically like the sternocleidomastoid is gonna start from there. Talking about that, let's stretch his neck a little bit as well, because right now you can actually, yeah, you can definitely stretch his neck a little bit. Let's just make this a little bit more roundy here. It doesn't look square and weird. Depending on the type of work, you know, sometimes I keep going with a very sketchy feel to it all the way. But in this case here, I'm actually, you know, sculpting a little bit sketchy and then smoothing it out, just so I can feel the forms a little bit more organically. But if it's just like a sketch all the way through, sometimes I leave some marks, you know, and keep going with it. It's pretty cool actually to, from time to time, just exercise that. There's a, let's see if I I'm looking very fast here. So, this is like I think my first post on Instagram, like in 2017 when I started posting. I have those. Let's see. Let me show you those guys here. Let's see. Going, keep going, keep going. A lot in there. I have to go back to my Giger, by the way. I really want to finish that portrait. Where is it? Oh, dang it. Well, it stopped in there. Well, I can show you some other time. There's like two things that I like doing, which is basically like this this type of work, right? It's like very, you know, it's like detailed and has a lot of stuff in it, like all pores and all that stuff. But I have those sketches, and what was one of my first posts on Instagram, actually, if you look, it's just a bunch of sketches, and kind of like done in either one night or 2 nights each one, just to build up some speed, you know. It's like right now, because I don't do that anymore, I'm kind of like back to being a little slower, you know. It's like, and especially like working in movies, man. It's not like we are the fastest people out there, you know. It's like people working in games are way faster than movie people because of the, you know, the deadlines and everything, you know. It's like the fact that, you know, people working in games have to really crank those models fast, you know. And I mean, like I work in stuff like Transformers that you have like 3 months to finish up a character, you know. Although it's a lot of pieces you have to put together, but still, you know. So really not the fastest. But it's cool to do sketches, you know. It's like this kind of stuff here. It's one of my favorite things. For example, like in a different time, if I was not teaching those classes, I probably would crank some of those sketches, try to do it in 1 or 2 nights, and then just do those clay renders, you know, that I used to do, and then just post, which is really cool to just like get stuff going and get fresh. But nowadays, like there's so many clay renders everywhere now that like multiple softwares and multiple artists like with packages like for clay brushes and stuff. So it's not even that that cool anymore to have like, you know, it's like a lot of clay stuff posted in there. So I had my run, I did my fair share, and then now it's a little bit too common for me to be comfortable doing it. So all those forms around here, I mean, like if there's a smile, I'm gonna have to dig this area, as you can tell right there. And then as I dig this area here, the zygomatic muscle that's pulling like the corner of the lips in here, it's gonna start pouring around here and creating this volume, right? So basically like you have this line that goes from here, oops, from here to here, right? So basically like that's what I'm representing here. I have a little bit of that volume being built, but then I have the other folds coming around here and a little bit more tension built because of the smile itself. And then I'm gonna have to look at the references, obviously, but you can tell by looking at that how thin that nasolabial fold is, you know? It's like even the shape of it, right? But I'm gonna have to see, because here he's talking, he's not actually smiling. That curvature might be a little bit different, right? But yeah, we're gonna look at this in the next couple of days, and actually, in fact, until the very end. One thing to know is that I never stop messing around with the character with even the primary forms all the way to the very end. And that's another thing that I say, you know, is like it's a great advantage with digital art, like 3D sculpting, is that, you know, this magic of being able to go back and forth in resolution with the character, right? It's great. I mean, like we're gonna be working with HD geometry, adding pores and wrinkles and all that stuff. And then at the same time, from time to time, we're gonna go back to our primary forms and readjust things slightly, you know? It's like, try not to do anything after you start putting pores and wrinkles. They're too localized. So for example, if you're gonna do a change, try not to do something like this, right? Because that's gonna mess up with the pores and everything. But if you do like broad changes like this, for example, it's almost like the behavior you would expect to have if you're working with morph targets, you know, with blend shapes, right? You're gonna have the pores in there, and they're not gonna be obliterated just because you're changing a few things. as long as you do like in a very broad way, right? So for example, amplifying his smile right there, right? Or if the shape of the cranium is too small, you can actually make things bigger, right? But without actually destroying things too much, right? Just using like a very, very broad brushes, right, to do so. Let's take a look at this angle here. And it's amazing how big the whole volume is, right? To the point that yesterday when I was adding like the temporalis muscle in here, I was kind of thinking like, yeah, I have to dig it in. But no, in fact, this pops out as well. I'm gonna have to bring this out and add more of that volume. Even here behind the ear a little bit. Do carefully, but definitely like adds a lot. And that's probably gonna make it grow vertically as well. Let's take a look again, like a front view. Actually, in that angle looks a little bit flat in there, but definitely has more volume. I'm gonna bring this area here up slightly.
Chris, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So with the progeria, it looks like the faces are almost a little bit deflated around the cheek area.
Yes, definitely.
Very, very interesting. Do you have recommendations on sculpting that area? Do you build up planes or like?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really interesting like muscles or tendons going through that area that are pulling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like in this case here, because of this myo, I'm actually building some of the compression here, adding more volume. But like in a facial expression like that, it's very kind of like emaciated, right? Like you get like a lot of deflation happening in there. Yeah. And the thing is, like, it's hard to find a reference of him, for example, without the glasses, because the glasses are a little deceiving, right? Like there's in this case here, for example, you got like this double shadow in there, which is actually exaggerating even more, but I can definitely see the whole deflation that's happening there that you're talking about. Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one, man. Since we are doing the same character, we're going to be learning with each other here.
Here, I have two images that I was looking at, which maybe they have some ideas on. In chat.
Oh, okay. Let me take a look. Yeah. Let's see that. Oh, look at that. That's very interesting, isn't it? Man. This is 15-year-old. He looks older than him, huh? 15 years old, man. Wow. Look at that. The hands, man. That's amazing. And yesterday I was talking about his skin not looking too old, right? It's almost like the under structures. I mean, like the everything else was looking very old, like structure-wise, but the skin was looking fairly young. But in this case here, the skin looks very old too. Very interesting.
So progeria, I guess, has something to do with the nucleus being kind of inflated.
Yeah.
I don't know if the mass of everything is more compact.
Huh.
The skin would be thinner, the cell walls would be thinner, all that.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very, man, yeah, that's something we're gonna have to figure it out. But that's the very cool subject too, man. And he is like, wow, he still has a little bit of hair though. Very, very interesting, huh? And interesting, like see how kind of like curved is his nose, like from the front in here. It's almost like looks like a broken nose. And I noticed that with the little girl too. I was looking at the little girl because he has a fairly straight nose, but that little girl, let's see, which one is that? She had a very right. Let's see with the brother. This one. Her nose is actually very, very symmetrical. This is more symmetrical. But you see, like, she still has the features a little bit more, like, young, right? Like, I mean, like, if you cover the nose altogether, it's almost like, yeah, she's a little girl. But then him, a little bit older. It seems like for them, like 2 years makes this huge difference. They changed their features quite a lot, you know? You saw the pictures of him as a little baby. He was pretty much like a normal-looking child, you know, and then like in a few years it just like starts getting super old looking. Yeah, man. Yeah, but let's do this study together. If you find anything else, let's share. Yeah,
sure. There's one more other picture. It looks like it's one link, but I think it's The one right above you, the one you clicked.
Which one? Oh, in the link you sent?
Yeah, it has India in the name, I believe.
Let's see. Where is it?
Like the first thing. I'll
which one is that?
Just look at one link.
You're talking about the chat or the?
Yeah. In the chat, if you
Uh-huh.
very bottom.
Oh, okay. There's another one. India. Okay, so this one.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
Like in the cheek, it kind of pushes back.
Uh-huh.
Either part or pushing forward.
Yeah, you see, like the zygomatic bone here is very receded, right? Like it's very low volume, and then it's creating this little gap in there that's revealing like the zygomatic muscle pulling right here. So you had, it was like right underneath here. It's kind of an interesting kind of like depression right there. But again, like to know how this little guy is gonna look like when he's smiling, I was like, when all this stuff is compressed against it, it's gonna be a different look. But very interesting that the ears, the way that you have like the double forms and everything that we are looking for Sam, it's kind of very similar as well. Same type of nose, much more bulgy eyes here though. Very, very interesting, man. Thanks for sharing. I'm gonna save it.
Yeah.
Let's do let's put it right. Where's my folder? Right here. Got this guy there too. Awesome. Yeah, guys. So I think that's what we had for today. You know, it's like I'm gonna do the same thing I did yesterday. I'm gonna go back in the time framing here and try to generate another time lapse for you guys. So we have that as a register in there, what was done, and then tomorrow we're gonna keep doing a little bit more of this, but also we're gonna do some first renders as well. So I think I'm gonna start the class tomorrow with a little render. Introducing you guys like to Arnold if you don't have experience with Arnold. We're gonna be doing some HDRI. I'm gonna point you to some sources I use for HDRIs, doing some area lights, and then point you guys to some books as well that are good. You know, it's like I think the best books are always like photography books, right? Like get like some good ones that have like a description about the equipment that's being used. So for example, like you can have like a lighting setup, like a studio light that has like a classic 3-light setup. Or you can have like a single light setup. You can simulate something like a Rembrandt light. You know, it's like the little triangle under one of the eyes, not the more dramatic, warmer light, you know. So all those things, let's try to do it tomorrow, since now we have the scene already with the correct size that we, you know, it's like the character is already in the correct size. Just add some lights in there and just start playing with it so we can actually feel the character a little bit, you know. So do a little bit of that tomorrow, maybe a little bit of start in a very basic skin shader, so we can actually feel the, get the feeling of the skin a little bit more, and get something rendered. You know, it's like I like to do this like early on, just to start the scene so you can get a feel of it. You know, it's like, so the character, you can start like looking for the best lighting that's gonna fit that specific character. You know, it's like if you're gonna do something more dramatic, use more color lights, for example, or it's like a little bit more of a realistic environment. There's a bunch of HDRIs. I can point you to my favorite ones, and then we can do some tests. You know, it's like, and then from this point on, all the way to the last day, it's a matter of like, you know, going through a lot of HDRI maps and just like researching. You know, it's like sometimes you find one that has a very interesting reflection for the eyes, but then the lights don't work quite well, so you can actually add blockers to block the light from some place, or you can actually shift the color of the HDRI to something that's a little bit warmer or a little bit cooler, you know. So there's a lot of little things we can do, and just starting with playing with the lighting tomorrow and doing some renders, it's a different thing, because then you start seeing the model as a physical model, right? It's a very interesting thing is that when we're looking at something in ZBrush like that, it's just a ZBrush model, right? You don't know exactly how those forms are going to behave under actual lighting, right? But then if you use an HDRI light, it puts this character in kind of like a simulation of a real environment, right? And then you can actually see the forms. It's like, okay, this is going to work, or this is not going to work. It's like, yeah, I can see that the eyes can pop out a little bit more, or, you know, it's like the chin doesn't look quite right, so I have to pull it forward or back or whatever, you know. It's really seeing the character as a physical object. So that's very important. So we're going to do this tomorrow. And then we're gonna keep iterating those same scenes like forever, all the way to the end. Gonna be iterating the same Maya and Zebra scenes, you know, and hopefully gonna be seeing this thing like developing and getting cooler and cooler over time. And I'm really excited to see what you guys are gonna come up with. And just like Adam, you know, it's like if you have anything to share of your current sketch, don't be shy. You know, it's like we are people are very nice in the group in there. There are no assholes in there, as far as I can tell. And so just feel free to share your stuff, you know, it's like, and I'm pretty sure like people are gonna, you know, comment if they think it's pretty cool, and, you know, and yeah, just make sure that you participate of the, you know, the group in there. That group I normally had like separate before. I had like a class of May that I had a group just for the class of May, and then June and July. And then I think it was around July that we decided like, let's group everything, you know, it's like, and let's have everyone in a single group. And it's very cool because people can interact with people who did this class like in May of last year and who still post stuff, you know. But at the same time, it's like it gets bigger and bigger, right? Like we're going to be probably like 500 users very soon. And then sometimes I take like some time, you know, it's like take my sweet time to go back and have some, you know, more comments to add. But I try to do this kind of like every couple of days, you know, it's like every 4 or 5 days or so. I go back in there and I try to see what's new and then comment on them. I did a good chunk today, but I have to do a couple of other artists. So if you have anything to post, just share in there, and then we're going to be commenting. And if I don't comment in there, if you want to share something here, you know, like Adam just did, we can just comment in here as well, you know. So thank you so much again, guys, and very excited to see what's going to come up out of this class, you know. As you can tell, like in my Instagram, I try to share, you know, it's like when people actually manage to finish their work. And it's not easy because, I mean, like after I finish my class in here, like after a month, right, the model is normally not completely finished just yet, but it's pretty close to it. So I take another, you know, a couple of days to actually wrap it up, you know, so I can post. Not by using any technique that's different from anything that I'm going to be teaching here. It's just refining, you know, it's like it's the eternal search for like getting the perfect lighting and all that stuff, you know, it's like, so it takes time. And with my students, it's the same thing. Sometimes they do the class in August, and then they're going to post something in October, you know, it's like the final product and everything. And then when they do, I normally share, you know, it's like if I think the work looks really cool, I share on my Instagram and I try to plug your work and get you more followers and stuff, you know. So, you know, it's very cool when you guys can actually push forward and get the work with the render and everything, you know, it's like it makes me really proud too. So let's hope most of you guys can do that. But I understand that it's a very, it's a excruciating process, you know, it's like it's a lot of little moving parts that have to be put together. And especially like a lot of dedication and time put in this class to make things shine, you know. If you just roll with it and you're just like, oh, I might model a little bit today, maybe tomorrow I have something else to do, you know, it's like, then you're probably not going to be taking full advantage of it. So I would say like, yeah, this is the time, you know, you guys are putting a good investment in the class. So if you can actually work hard with me, because I have no choice. You guys have choice, I don't. I have to work hard to make sure that things work at the end. So if we can keep going like in a similar rhythm, I'm pretty sure at the end we're gonna reach a good result. So thank you so much, guys, and have a great night or a great day, whatever time you're in.
Thank you,
Chris.
Yeah, yes.
What is the best way to reach out to you privately? Is it Facebook or like email or something?
Oh, I would say like email is easier to reach me. By email, yeah, because like Facebook, man, it's like I'm being pulled, you know, it's like with private messages, and then Instagram as well. There's a lot of private messages, but I try my best to reply like to emails for sure. And then the group, if you have something that's more generic you want to share.
Yeah, because I have like some work in progress, but I am not in the point to share it like publicly. So I just wanted to send it to you before and making sure if it is the right way to go. That's why I wanted to send an email. I am not sure where I can get your email address.
Oh, okay. Like if you use the email address that's in the website, you can reach me. Yeah.
Sure.
And then if not, then my email address, like if you guys want to take note, like this is my personal. It's Chris Antropus. So it's all together. Chris, K-R-I-S, Antropus, A-N-T-R-O-P-U-S, and then at gmail.com. That's my personal one. That one can reach me as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.